Now, moving on from that, leaked documents have revealed the European Union is set to demand access to the United Kingdom's fishing waters and freedom of movement for students as part of a post-Brexit trade deal. This comes as Sir Keir Starmer looks to reset relations with the EU after entering 10 Downing Street back in July. So would granting concessions to the EU amount to a betrayal of that vote for Brexit? Well, let's see what my panel think of that. Former Labour advisor Scarlett Maguire and the political commentator Duncan Barks. Scarlett, the fact of the matter is here, I don't think it was just limited to students, young people under the age of 30, right? That's the rumour.
It was 18 to 30. Look, if you go into negotiations, when you go in, both sides are quite far apart, and then you come together. We want things, they want things. If we want them, we're going to have to trade. There will be some compromise, right? I mean, they're not going to get what they want. We're not going to get everything that we want. I mean, one of the things is actually the first thing that everybody, a lot of people are desperate for is what's called the veterinary stuff, which is that you can send animals in and out, and actually remember, we haven't had a deal. That's the problem. Is that we've had all this stuff, and mostly it's been stuck because of Northern Ireland. That's where it all gets silly. And so if we want a deal, right, it's not going to be like Boris Johnson promised, that we're going to have everything. Plus, is that if we want a deal, we're going to have to compromise. So we've got to decide what it is we want and what we compromise on.
Duncan, the compromise part is the worry here, because a lot of viewers are of the view that actually the man would sell us out faster than Prince Andrew. Yeah. Allegedly.
I'm sympathetic to that view, and I think Scarlett's right. This is the beginning of horse trading, right? And this is how it works. But I think you're right as well, Darren. You're dealing with a man who, in my view, Sir Keir Starmer, I think will have a bias towards doing whatever he can to get us closer to the European Union again. I also don't think he's the strongest of leaders. Listen, I don't want to rehearse the Brexit arguments of 8 years ago. I think we all have the scars. I wanted Brexit to work. I believe any country, if it wants to be its own independent country, should be. There was a mandate there, but the political class in this country let the people down. Mm-hmm. And Brexit didn't turn out to be the Brexit that I think a lot of people voted for. I think what is really interesting about this story is it's going to start to give more ammunition to people like Nigel Farage and Reform UK, because if people start to think that we're moving closer towards the European Union, you can bet your bottom dollar or euro that what will happen is Farage will leap on that and will use it as a campaigning tool. And the problem is the Conservatives fought tooth and nail with each other over Brexit. Labour tried to stop Brexit. Reform can clear up here. And I think, unless Starmer is really hard in these negotiations, you're going to see Reform UK leap on that.
Your wallet. And Scarlett, the key point there, which is a good one, is that actually you have an incoming administration in the United States of America as well. We're looking at a time in which France and Germany, both the top players within the European Union, have political turmoil at the moment. I think it's safe to say that's probably an understatement.
Yes, I think you're correct, Darren.
So surely Sir Keir Starmer's going to be stuck between a rock and a hard place here, with the Americans wanting him to be closer to them and the EU saying, actually, we could do with Britain right now.
Yeah, but what we have to understand is that the reason we haven't so far got a trade deal with America was because that had to be a deal too, right? Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things they were offering us that we really didn't want was chlorinated chicken. I mean, what we have to look at is I think the latest poll said that people were willing to go, they wanted to go back into the single market, because actually the problem is that the deal or the non-deal we've got at the moment is costing us a lot of money. So we've got to see. But as far as the under 30s go, we've got that deal with Australia and New Zealand, My daughter spent 2 years in Australia working, playing, doing all sorts of things quite happily. We have masses of Australians and New Zealanders over here. I mean, actually, when we used to have young people from Europe over here, I have to say, they worked incredibly hard. They worked in the cafes. everywhere you went, you found young Europeans, and then they they were at the universities. I don't quite understand why we're so against having young people from Europe and allowing our young people to go to Europe. I mean, that would be the deal.
I mean, on that point there, the immigration point, 1.5 million homes Labour are saying they want to build.
Yeah.
Apparently, we don't have the builders.
No.
So is that going to be another way in which they say, well, look, you know, we need people from Europe because we need the immigration?
Possibly. I mean, you know, I'm relatively relaxed when it comes to immigration, though I have a very different view on what is illegal immigration, and maybe we'll touch on that a little bit.
But 1 million people came last year.
Yeah, exactly.
That's too high.
Exactly. And, you know, the infrastructure's not in place. Going back to your point, Darren, we do have a labour shortage. If it means we can build more houses and we need to import some people who can build them and we don't have the homegrown talent...
more people, then you've got to build more houses on top of that.
I know, it's a circle that goes round and round, you know, and I think if you want to be hard, really hard on immigration, I'm talking legal immigration at the moment. If you want to be really hard on it, you have to realise that certain housing targets are not going to be met. Ditto, you know, trying to get waiting times down, not going to be met because over the course of the last 20 years, and this is a failure of predominantly the last Conservative government, but also, you know, previous to that, a little bit, we have not trained enough people to fulfil various trades in this country. No one has done it, and we find ourselves in the situation we're in. Just picking up on the trade point very quickly, you know, what's going to come down the track here is if we start having this closer relationship with the EU because we want trade, etc., and geographically it makes sense, there are, you know, it's a collection of our nearest neighbours, that is going to put us on a collision course with Donald Trump, because Donald Trump has made it very clear he's not a fan of the EU. And I believe, currently as a sovereign nation, we should have the best of both worlds. That should be one of the benefits of Brexit. You trade with European countries and also you trade with America. Because, of course, when we were in the EU, there were limitations on what we could and couldn't do with America. Now we're out of the EU, we should be able to benefit from that.
And the veterinary point, that Scarlett made earlier, actually I think that shows the quite malicious side of the EU negotiating team, because that's one thing where surely it's not beyond the wit of man for there to be an agreement.
I don't think they like us, Darren. And, you know, we've got to talk about fisheries as well very quickly.
Which is terrible.
That's in the papers today as well. I'm a little bit old school. I believe you're an island. You should have the right to decide who comes into your territorial waters and doesn't. End of.
France gets more out of the English Channel than we do, Scarlett. Surely you can't believe that's all right.
France calls it La Manche. I think, to be frank, it's not the English Channel, it is the bit of water that divides us.
Well, I wish it was more French, Scarlett, because then maybe they'd care about the migrants that they're letting just walk over into Britain.
Well, we can go on and on about that, and we can get on about that. But I mean, certainly one of the things that if we get on to that is that yes, they're not interested in returns, but they've never been interested. I mean, why would you go? Oh, right, we'll take these people back who don't want to live in our country and they want to live in yours, and nobody wants them. I mean, that's mad. But I do think. I mean, I just think we have to understand that negotiations are negotiations.
OK.